I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the meeting of the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10-4.6, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. Meeting notice was also posted in the boardroom of the upper school campus, sent to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Express Times, and the Hunterdon County Democrat, and sent to the clerks of Delaware Township, East Amwell Township, Flemington Borough, Hunterdon Township, and Reddington Township. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda. Mrs. Spitzer, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bletfield?
Here.
Mrs. Duggan?
Here.
Ms. Gong?
Here.
Mrs. Kellogg? Here. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Here.
Mrs. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Reimer? Here. And Mrs. Santangelo?
Here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Reimer, if you'd like to read the mission statement, please.
Sure. Hunterdon Central is an innovative educational community dedicated to the intellectual, social, and emotional safety and growth of all students. While fostering curiosity and promoting wellness, we aspire to create powerful learning experiences, establish strong partnerships, and serve as contributing members of society.
Thank you. Okay, we just had a switch for the August 19 minutes. We should be good now. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from August 19th.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Has there been a change or anything?
Yeah, so Heather just emailed us the minutes as opposed to having them posted, just with some different details in there.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
minutes weren't changed. I just took
You
them
just
off
pulled them off of the
and then
posting.
emailed them to the people that,
Okay.
that's the
Yep.
only difference. They were not changed.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, any discussion besides that? Okay, so can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bletfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Gong? Ms.
Yes.
Gong? Mrs. Kellogg? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Abstain.
For both?
I'm doing the August 19th first.
But the regular minutes and. Okay.
Then just from the exec, I'm abstaining. I will say yes to the regular meeting.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes,
All yes, motion carries.
thank you. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 5th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bletfield?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes. Okay. Okay, moving on to board correspondence. We have a few things that we have from this past month, and we also, Noelle, we put the board correspondence on there from the last month as well.
Okay, great.
Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report, and welcome, Jessica. Oh, Miss Candelosi Hayes, sorry.
I go by it also.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. September is always an exciting time. It's always a busy time as we prep for going back to school. I'm very pleased to let you all know, and I think I've let you know this, but we'll let you know publicly, that we had a very smooth start to the school year, a very happy start to the school year, a good vibe within the school. I won't say too much because I know we have more information coming from our students. But I do want to say it's a testament to the hard work of our staff, or dedication of our staff, our administrators, and everybody else who contributed to the strong opening to the school. I wanted to give a special welcome to our new staff members who joined us this year. Really exciting. We had a great new staff orientation on August 20th to 22nd, so that was really exciting. In fact, they made me participate in the team building activity since I was new in my role. So that was exciting as well. And I also want to especially welcome our students, especially the new students to Hunterdon Central, both freshmen and students who transferred in. I hope they're having a great start to the school year. As far as we can tell, everybody has been really excited to be back in school and back in the swing of things with learning and growing and just seeing their friends again. So tonight on the agenda, I wanted to highlight just our board and our district goals. We do have them on for approval later on, but I want to thank you all for your trust and support in setting these goals for governance, for our board, as well as for our district goals. The goals are really a second phase of last year's goals. You'll see that we're emphasizing students' sense of belonging through climate and culture. We're continuing our work with instructional priorities and a common instructional model, which we'll also utilize with our K-8 sending districts. That will help with students' readiness and transition to high school. We will continue to look at our opportunities for students to ensure that we're offering the best curricular programs and offer leadership and learning opportunities. And lastly, we want to ensure we're staying connected with our larger community, and our partnership with families, local businesses, and other organizations will be critical. As we gather to discuss the important work guiding our district, I wanted to take a moment to highlight the new voices joining us this year. Very excited to welcome our student representatives to our Board of Education, and I wanted to formally welcome Bronwyn Downey and Erin Johnson as our representatives to the board. They're sitting right there. You will hear from them in a moment. That's a rookie mistake. I promise the light is green. Okay, so Bronwyn and Erin are right there. So in Bronwyn and Erin, we have individuals who exemplify leadership, curiosity, and a passion for making a difference. They bring with them the unique perspectives of our students, and I know they will be invaluable in helping us better understand the needs, concerns, and aspirations of the students we serve. Bronwyn and Erin have shown dedication not only to their academics, but also to their communities. They have demonstrated their commitment by creating positive change, and I'm confident they will contribute meaningfully to our discussions and decisions in the year ahead. As we proceed cautiously incorporating our student representatives into our meetings, we kindly ask our board members and the public to refrain from directing questions to them at this time. This will allow them time to ease into their roles and participate without added pressures. I encourage everyone on the board to actively engage with our student representatives, to listen carefully to their input, and to consider their insights as we shape the policies and programs that will impact our district. So, Bronwyn and Erin, I'd like to ask you to come up and make your first report.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Bronwyn Downey. I'm a junior here at Hunterdon Central, and I will be your student representative for this Board of Education this year.
Good evening. My name is Erin Johnston, and I'm a senior here at Hunterdon Central. We are honored to represent our fellow students and provide insight throughout this school year.
We will be giving a student report tonight directly from Central students about the start of this year. Firstly, class meetings have taken place for all students, where counselors, office staff, and administration met with each grade to review rules, go over student resources, and also emphasize goals this year to lift up student voice and belonging, part of which is our role here. The students also had a career and college planning night for the seniors on September 17th in order to prepare them for the next steps after graduating on June 24th, 2025.
The senior class has been working closely with our college and career counselor, Ms. Nectarline, and we are getting ready to begin submitting applications to colleges this fall.
Our first back-to-school night and the second one that will be held on Wednesday will allow students to volunteer and help out parents when they inevitably get lost in the 600s hallways. Also, students are preparing to take the PSAT in October and SATs alongside getting registered for and taking deep breaths for their advanced placement classes and other courses. Central Student Council is currently planning our 3 Spirit Weeks this school year. This first one will be featuring our 3rd annual Fall Activity Fair, as well as our Homecoming, which will be occurring right after the game on October 5th and will be an Old Hollywood-esque theme. Finally, clubs are officially underway with many new members joining after the Freshman Social, where numerous clubs from the Theater Honor Society to Marine Biology Club advertised the incoming class. Club events include a Rock Around the Clock 50s night for our Thespian Society, the cheer team's Cheer for the Cure event on October 19th, which will raise breast cancer awareness, and our U.S. Bands competition for our marching band that occurred on Saturday. Our fall sports are also having a very successful start with a win on the second night of school against Monroe for football, and our girls volleyball and boys soccer teams, our varsity teams, remain undefeated so far, and we look forward to the rest of the season for all sports.
Here at Central, the students are happy to be back and are excited for many events to come. So far, we've had 3 football games with great school spirit and attendance, and a fall sports kickoff party held at Stewart Field, and senior sunrise is coming up on this Friday.
This year, Erin and I will strive to listen to all students with both virtual and in-person outreach in order to ensure that student voices are both heard and appreciated. We are looking forward to this upcoming year and sharing with you all the passion that Central students have for this school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bronwyn and Erin. Great job. And once again, welcome to you both. We look forward to working with you and seeing the positive impact that you'll bring on account of all of our students here at Hunterdon Central. So for the next part of the report, I'd like to ask Mr. Brandt, our principal, to come up, and he's going to be presenting on our 2023-2024 School Climate and Culture Survey results. And I think I will add that, and he's going to talk about this, but our survey results also help to guide us in our goal development this year.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Again, my name is Ed Brandt, principal here, and I'm just going to be sharing just some of the pieces of all the data and all the information we received, both from the Climate Culture Survey back in the spring and some of the work being done with that information, along with just like the young ladies mentioned earlier. So this slide just kind of reviews over the last 6 years the various types of tools we had to measure climate and culture here. Each of the last 3 years, we've used primarily the same forms for students, staff, and parents. Makes it a lot easier to compare. We had 2 years there prior to COVID when we were able to compare, and then the COVID year, as you can see, our surveys there were mainly really in the moment to help students learn in that mode, if you would. And in the last 3 years, we were able to really take a look at patterns, gaps, wins, and areas of needing of improvement. This past spring, we afforded all students, staff, and family members to complete it. It wasn't mandatory. And also families, like any of our surveys, have the ability to opt out. If we give them at least 2 weeks notice. For your information, it was less than 10 families opted out of it, just so you know. But in the spring, we had 673 students complete the online questionnaire. 45 students reported that they were willing to be interviewed. We ended up being able to interview 35 of them. Of the staff members, 138 completed it, and of the families, 134. This slide here, I'm not going to go through it all, but basically it gives you an idea of, all right, now we have this data, what are we going to do now with it? So we had a cohort of staff members, a shout out to Karen Rossi and Nicole DePaula, and Scott Cohen, who's here with us as well, worked with me in helping both facilitate and then taking all the data and getting it into a format that was digestible and usable for what we've done with it so far and what we plan on doing next. For the student survey, again, that cohort pulled all the information into usable text, if you would, so that we were able to see, big themes jumping out, but also make more detailed comparisons from previous years. As far as the staff survey is concerned, that cohort, as well as the administration, also took a deep dive in the summer when we had a couple days of retreat here, getting ready to the school year. And then the plan for this fall is for the Home and School Association to take a look at the parent results and basically follow the same process we did, identifying any major themes, prioritizing, and then identifying next steps. So for the quantitative items, the items that were questions that are on a Likert scale, This is just a slide to show you an example of two of them, but basically for the student surveys, and the majority of this is going to be about students right now, they had 5 different possible outcomes or responses. So you can see, for example, on how much do your teachers encourage you to do your best? You know, the most favorable would be encourage me a tremendous amount, down to quite a bit, to some, to a little, to they do not encourage at all. So what we did, similar to previous years, is if there were 5 slices, if you would, we took the most favorable 3 and added them up. And I know that there was question last year, why not top 2? You could do either 2 or 3, but for comparison's sake, I stuck with 3 again. We could do 2, but then it makes it really difficult to compare. Of all the students' prompts on the quantitative study, or the quantitative survey, they really broke down into 4 different major areas. One of those areas is in academics. This slide is what I did here. What we did here was we took each of those 6 prompts and we compared the 3 years in a row. So you can see from 3 years to 2 years ago, all 6 areas saw an increase. And then from 2 years ago to this past year, 5 of the 6 areas saw an increase yet again. For those who like statistics, a paired t-test, basically what it does is it matches up, prompt to prompt from each year. And if you have significant difference, then that probability value on the right, you're looking for anything below a 0.05, 0.05, anything below that tells you there's a statistically significant difference. So I'm happy to say for both of those, from year 1 to 2, and then also this past year, we saw a significant difference in those. One of the ones I wanted to highlight, because I'm going to bring back to it again later on, is how much do your teachers encourage you to do your best? That one there really jumped out. Also, how many of your teachers make learning interesting? That saw the greatest jump of 8.8 percentage points from 2 years ago to this past spring. Another cluster, if you would, is on climate and safety. And this is an area here where we saw there were 14 prompts associated with that, and we saw an improvement in 12 out of the 14, which was a significant difference from the year before. You can see from year 1 to year 2, there was not a significant difference in the values, but from year 2 to 3, there was. And a couple of the areas that I would like to say make me pleased as principal, proud to point out that we saw, significant jumps there on how much respect do students at Central show you. That had a jump of over 4 percentage points. And I feel that students at Central help each other out when needed. And how much do you feel you matter to others at Central? Those are areas right there that really jumped out to me to see that the highest difference is there. And also you can see the 10-point difference on how often you enjoy being at school. Pleased to report that. That's a heck of a jump. Meanwhile, though, there's one area, too, that I'll admit, the question of how often do you stay home because you do not feel safe at school. That's an area that dropped. Now, it didn't drop much. 0.1 percentage points isn't huge, but it's still there. I used a compliment, by the way. That doesn't mean 90% of the students wanted to stay home. The favorable is that you want that to be 100% are staying here. So less than 10%. But of course, as principal, I'm going to tell you right now, I wish that was 0. Who wanted to stay home. But again, 12 out of 14 areas saw an increase. I taught geometry. I know that the triangle is the strongest figure, if you would. Doesn't wobble, right? That's why you have tripods. And when the student, family, and staff work together, that's the strongest our school can be right there. I'm proud to say here that we had 9 items, if you would, and 8 of the 9 showed significant increases there. The one area that didn't was how often do your parents and guardians view your grades? And I'm not knocking that question, but The students might not even just realize how often their parents take a look at it. But the other areas, for example, how connected do you feel to the adults at your school? An increase of 10% right there really jumped out at me. That's excellent. It's one of the areas we focused on, and I saw positive results. And then also, how much do your family encourage you to do well? Look at that number, 93%. That's fantastic. So if that number is high, and then also they feel like they have a connection here with the other adults, you know you're in a good direction. So again, areas of growth definitely there, but proud to say that I think that triangle is strong. And then the last area was the sense of belonging. And these varied from areas in DEI, if you would, to mental health concerns, to just overall general how much do you feel like you belong here at Central. And it was happy for me to see that for all the work that we are doing in trying to incorporate mental health just as much as you would physical health is excellent. And to show that that increase of 6.1% there, percentage points, students realize what we are doing here. And also, overall, how much do you feel like you belong? The fact that that increased from 3 years ago from 72%, now it's getting close to 80%, you know, is really pleasing. This chart here is just basically we took each of those 4 clusters, took the averages in those clusters, and then compared them over the 3 years. And you can see there's a nice steady increase from year 1 to 2 and year 2 to 3 of this same tool. I mentioned earlier about the students being interviewed. So not only were there the questionnaire prompts, but also staff members interviewed students who, within the anonymous survey, said that they would be interested in being interviewed. Basically, there were 3 questions. What do we do well that we should continue doing? What are areas that we can improve? And what's something that you would want your teacher to know about you? So these are the 6 areas that jumped out as major themes from the interviews. One that jumped out to me was also most students responded they love their teachers. How good is that? And again, these are the students through the interviews. They really love our electives, our clubs, the availability of tutorial, the availability of seating during lunch, and they love this place right here in the IMC. Areas that jumped out of improvement, lavatories, availability of restrooms during the school day and after school. And that is something that we heard anecdotally last year. And going into the summer and then now, hopefully we have things in place that we'll see significant changes there. And Superintendent Cangelosi-Hayde will attest periodically. I just check the cameras to see how long are the lines. I'll take a snapshot and send it to her. Be like, yep, looks good. Because we know that that's one area of feedback we've gotten from students and parents about that. They mentioned that security in the one specific area up here, which ironically is an area where we have the highest security, but it's also probably our densest area of students as they come out for the buses. So I think there's a feeling of probably unease, really, if you're not used to being in a big crowd, being funneled out there. So that's right out here at the mid-campus area. And there's a few other areas you can see as well to improve. And then lastly, what students wish teachers knew about them. And it's one that we work on, one of them there, the balancing act, that students work outside of school in our activities and athletics, and trying to balance all their learning with everything else is tough. They appreciate, and I mentioned earlier about the engaging learning. They appreciate when teachers make classes interesting, engaging. And the bottom right there is an interesting one, too, that jumped out in the interviews. The students themselves said, yes, the cell phones are distracting. And it's an area that we're looking to address. And I think we've made, so far, significant strides, but now we got to maintain it throughout the school year. So those are the results of the interviews with students. This is a slide from previous, but I want to point out the next few slides. Those slides were based on feedback just from the students. Again, that cohort took a look at it. to see what areas of need and what jumped out, and myself included too, working on the data analysis because I like statistics. But in the summer, we took all that information and shared it with the administrative team, gave them a few days to digest it, and then we had an activity actually right here where basically to identify in groups our priorities and then categorize those priorities, and this slide will kind of explain it to you, whether it's a student-focused priority, staff, families, or school community, and whether it's an immediate priority, let's take care of this now this fall, or maybe over the next year and a half, or this is a long-term item. So these are the highlights from that share out and that work from the administrative team. And when Erin Bronwyn mentioned about in the class meetings, how we shared out some of the areas, these are the slides that I shared with all the students. I thought it was important for them to see what the administration here felt were some of the key areas too. So shout out to them for recognizing, yes, they love interactive activities, student-led learning, and varied teaching modalities. And that's something, as we already do, but to hear the students say, yep, well, they really like that, that adds more meat to it as well. And then you can see in the short term, one of them also right here with our two Board of Ed reps, student voice, increasing student voice, all the different avenues we have it. Ms. Cangelosi Hayden and I talked over the past year or so, and Mr. Cohen as well, very key on that. We had a lot of bits and pieces of it, a lot of, I could share the overall vibe and temperature of the school, but a more systematic way so that students also knew that they were being heard is key. As far as staff is concerned, some of the immediate areas of need is for our meetings together to be more focused on students, staff, and the community. A lot of times we can get away with spending more conversation on nuts and bolts things. Hey, how are we going to handle tomorrow or Wednesday night's back to school night, for example? That's something that maybe we can do in an email. But when we get together, let's really focus on those areas right there. Also, the staff said they really like having voice and also authentic feedback from the staff. So as an administrator who supervises staff members, I have to take that and realize staff members really welcome genuine conversation on how to improve, what's going well, how we can support them. And likewise, teachers doing that with students. And then families and community. Right now, this is an area, this is the next step. We have to take a look at the raw data. And then what I'm proposing is we work with the Home and School Association this fall, maybe not the first meeting, but in the second meeting, and give them the opportunity to digest the results as well. Any of the members there to do basically the same thing the administration did. What are the things we need to do now? What are the things that are long-term? And then the areas that the administration felt touched all three. This is a whole school community issue. Number one was, for right now, making sure that all three of those areas, all three of the components of that triangle are aware of what the code of conduct is. Not necessarily just the code of conduct, but also procedures. So that we're all on the same page. And then also the short term, we all recognize that the number of people proportionally, still a good number. When you have 600 results in a survey from students, there's a lot of schools that's like half of their population. It's still a significant number. But what can we do to incentivize students, staff, and families to complete the survey? And we are looking to, in this school year, having the survey a little earlier. We had it in April and May because we coincided it with some of the state testing because we felt that was a window of time for some of the students to have time outside of class to take it. But it creates a lag in getting the results. So we're looking to push that earlier to, say, January, February, so that both us as administration, students with the voice are going to take a look at it, and you have some time to digest it so that we go into the summer, basically shift it a few months, if you would. And then the one item there that jumped out on all of them, consistently communicate, celebrate, and report out the progress of the work for all of it. That's a long-term thing. We've had anecdotally feedback from staff members and parents saying, wow, I wish I knew that was all going on. Oh, I wish I knew that there was a committee talking about that and made those decisions based on that. If we can find a mode that's easy to access and doesn't make the committee work more burdensome, but really to celebrate all the work going on, because there is a lot of good work going on all those facets. So that would be the long term right there for the whole community. That is a nutshell of at least two of the areas, if you would. We can spend hours looking at the data, but obviously we have a meeting to get to. But thank you for your time, and look forward to working with you and students and staff on improving. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? And the report is in board docs, but if you can't open it, we can share it with you. Thank you, Mr. Rant. We appreciate it. And before I finish my report, I do want to mention the HIB and suspension report numbers that are included in that section of the agenda. So with that, I will conclude the report and hand it back over to you, Mrs. Duggan.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to, can you hear me? Yeah. Moving on to the organizational part. Motion to move the Board of Ed and district goals for 2024-25 school year as recommended by the superintendent.
So moved. Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion about board goals, district goals? Good. Okay, Mrs. Spitzer, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bluntfield?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Okay, now we're moving on to the first residents forum of the evening. This is the opportunity where the public can comment on any items that are on the agenda. So if we have anybody that wants to speak for items on the agenda, I am seeing none. So we will move on then to student life and programs. Mr. Reimer, you're going to give the update for that?
Sure, thank you. Tonight we have two items to move. The first is for tuition and transportation for a special education student, $10,850. And the second is for a movement to approve the attendance of the following students, 5 students from North Hunterdon Voorhees Regional High School for the multilingual program for 2024-25 school year. And that would be for 5 students. Each one, the estimated tuition is $30,893. So I'd like to move to approve those 2 items.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bluntfield?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, I'll give a quick, I'll take us through operations and transportation. The first 3 items are for the financial reports, invoices, and transfers for July. Actually, transfers were none. The fourth is district state aid. We were awarded $135,000 of aid that we can use for capital purposes. So we're going to move to accept that. We have a local food for school cooperative agreement, LFS funding opportunity extension. This is, we're getting an increase in the amount of $5,872.18. There are several routes, there's 7 routes here for the transportation routes that were negotiated. You can see the information there for that. We are going to approve the bus stops and routes for 2024 and 25. We have an ESC transportation joiner for Burlington County. You can see the information there. And then the last one, number 9, is professional service provider. substance abuse evaluations at a cost of $425 per evaluation. With that, I'd like to move O&T items 1 through 9.
Second. So moved. Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay.
I would just like to say that the bus routes were 152 pages. I think it's pretty impressive what our transportation staff does, and the level of detail that was in there was amazing. So a huge thanks to them.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Mrs. Spitzer, roll call, please.
Mrs. Butfield? Yes. Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg? Yes. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to personnel. Mrs. Butfield?
Yes, we have 28 items on the agenda tonight. The first one, we have 2 resignations. Then in number 2, we have 2 contractual appointments. We have another campus security officer and also a new manager of transportation. Number 3, we are appointing a current substitute bus driver to a full-time position. And number 4, we have our hourly appointments, which are mostly HCTV student workers. 5 and 6 have to do with substitute bus driver rates. We discussed it and supported it in personnel. However, it has since come to my attention that according to our bylaws, this will need to go through JTC first. So I will continue just going through. I'll make a motion for all of the items, including those, and then I will later ask that we table those 2 items for another time after it's gone through the process of going through JTC. 7, 8, and 9, we have our substitute teachers, custodians, and secretaries. Number 10, we have our after-hours tutorial instructors to prep for state testing, and that is grant-funded. 11 is our AM, PM supervision. 12, our athletic event workers. 13 is our chaperones. 14, we have curriculum writing for the G&T art curriculum. And then 15, we are appointing Dr. Jeff Charney as an interim assistant superintendent for curriculum and HR. Some of you may remember Dr. Charney. He was here previously as a board member, so he knows our district well, and we're looking forward to welcoming him back to help out the district and help out Dr. Cangelosi-Hade, or Mrs. Cangelosi-Hade. 16, we have our PM security. 17, we have the appointment of proctors, monitors, and test coordinators for SAT testing. 18, we have a 6th block stipend to cover for a social studies teacher who was out on leave. 19, we have a reappointment of a substitute bus driver. This item will stay on the agenda, but I will also need to make an amendment to that. So again, I'll make my first motion, but then we will need to make a motion to go back to our old rates until that's discussed in JTC. 20 and 21, we have their reappointment of substitute teachers and secretaries. 22, we have professional development. This list is longer than usual because we will now be including all professional development, not just the ones that are $150 or more. 23 is our Schedule C advisors. 24, we have the mechanic ASE certification stipends. 25, you'll see a very long list of TCNJ students for internships and student teaching. Mostly clinical practice 1, which is a precursor to student teaching. This list is much longer than usual because another school had pulled out of the program, so that's to our benefit. We're excited for the students who will be here, and it's a great opportunity both for them and for the district from a recruitment perspective in the future. 26, we have leaves of absences, 27 amendments, and finally 28, we are approving a job description for an athletic site manager. So with that, I will make a motion for personnel items 3.1 through 3.28.
Second.
Oh, motion and a second. Any discussion?
Now I would like to table.
Sorry, can I ask a question before you table that? So, were the previously approved bus routes that we just approved, were those put through the JTC? And if so, why not?
I think they were. Yeah, please.
Those are just Hunterdon Central bus routes that you're approving.
Okay. So there's no,
They're not Flem-Rare. Flem-Rare approves their own.
okay, thank you.
And I just wanted to comment, I'm so happy to see Dr. Charney on here. I think it's great that the board's going to support Jess in having some relief in your new role. And I think it's always great when we have someone in education on our board, or in this case, to help Jess. So I was happy to see that. Thanks, Lori.
Okay, so I'd now like to make a motion to table 3.5, table 3.6, and make an amendment to 3.19, where the rates will now be training $19 an hour, trips $24 an hour, and home to school $30 an hour.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion about it? Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Butterfield?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes,
All yes, motion carries as amended.
as amended. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Peterson, do you have the policy updates? Where are you over there? Sorry.
I move around a lot. We had a really productive policy committee this week. Actually, one of the first policies that we talked about abolishing, because it was really old and out of date, Principal Brandt actually said, let's see if we can repurpose this one and turn it into something that we really need for our district, which is the cell phone policy. And so we have been working with the administration, and they've been gathering feedback from teachers on what's been working, because obviously the district has been really focused on implementing a change for cell phone usage for a couple of years now. So we really just want to codify what has been working and basically show the board's support for that. And we are really hoping to have that ready to roll coming up, hopefully, very soon. But we spent a majority of our meeting really getting down into the nitty-gritty of some of the wording and pulling from other districts, and it was a really productive and collaborative process. So that should be on your radar. Hopefully, that'll be coming out soon, and we're kind of excited about that one. So what we do have on our agenda this month, we have, for first read, we have 13 different items. We have Regulation 1581, which is from March 2020. It's domestic violence mandated regulation. And we are adopting this regulation for the first time in response to the passage of NJSA 11A2-6A, which is a law under the purview of the Civil Service Commission and was effective January 8th, 2018. Obviously, we fall underneath, or we have employees that would fall, basically within that purview as well. So we are adopting this regulation. Policy 2361 is from June 2012. Acceptable use of computer network and resources. This was a required update from the FCC in 2012, updating the Children's Internet Protection Act. Regulation 2431.1 is from September 2020. This is a mandated regulation for emergency procedures for sports and other athletic activity. This follows the adoption of NJSA 18A 40-41.11 through 12, and this was last updated prior to 1998. So, This should be great to get in line with all the changes that have been made over the decades. Policy 2467 is from August 2021, surrogate parents and foster parents. This basically involves language changes from the administrative code, which discontinued the term foster parent and now uses the term resource family parent, so that'll switch over that switches over into the new policy. Policy 2481 is from June 2014, home or out-of-school instruction for general education pupils. And we actually had some discussion about this in policy. This was updated to reflect the fact that these are generally temporary, short-term situations when you have a home instruction under these that is not for a long-term health problem. And so the instruction hours are the same. The number of times the students and teachers are required to meet has not changed, but some of the specific requirements related to subject, grade, or special needs area, having specialized certification in those areas. The state has removed some of that because they were having difficulty basically getting such a strenuous process in place for a short-term placement. So everything else, though, the hours and the amount of time is the same. Policy 2520 is from March 2023. This is instructional supplies, and it requires equal distribution of supplies and materials to students throughout our district. Policy 5612 is from January 2019. This is assault on a district board of education members or employees. The only change in this is the electronic violence and vandalism reporting system, which was EVVRS, is now called the Student Safety Data System, which is the SSDS, because we love acronyms. And so that is really the only change in that. Nothing else changes. Policy 5613 from January 2019, removal of students for assault with weapons offenses. This also changed the EVVRS to the SDS. And it allows the superintendent to address the removal of a general education student on a case-by-case basis. Policy and regulation 6470.01 from September 2020. This is electronic funds transfer and claimant certification. This is an initial adoption of both the policy and regulation to our manual that our policy vendor believes should be mandated. So we are doing that. Policy 7440 from March 23, school district security. Basically, we used to be required to give blueprints and maps to the local law enforcement. Now they have updated the law, 18A 41-7.1, which became effective on May 10th, 2019, and this requires the district to provide local law enforcement with a critical incident mapping data, which is, I guess, different than a paper map as they used to do. Policy 8220 from March 2020, school day. This requires the board to annually approve the times the school will be in session, including the notations for shortened days, whether planned, early dismissals or emergency delayed openings, early dismissals, as we see when we have inclement weather. Regulation 8467, which is from June 2024 updates. Firearms and weapons. This regulation was last updated in 1998, so I think it's just being updated to reflect the many changes in the law in the definitions since that time. Policy 8505 is from May 2017. This is the local wellness policy, nutrient standards for meals and other, I think I meant meals and other foods. I have it written means and other foods. We're basically removing the language that relates specifically to the elementary and middle school students because we don't have those. It also adds language that requires the superintendent to designate a district wellness policy coordinator who will have the authority and responsibility to ensure we are in compliance with the policy and will provide a wellness policy assessment and maintain appropriate records as related to the same. I'm sure this is something that is done whether it has those titles and things. These are just things we're trying to get our manual up to date with our practices. So for 13 items that we have there that are updated are going to be on for the first read tonight. The second read, we have the 6 that we approved last month. I won't go through them all again. Nothing has changed since I went through them last month with the first read. There's no changes to the policies, so those are there. And then we have 4 policies to abolish. Also, nothing has changed from last month, and if you have any questions on these, I encourage you to watch last month's meeting or can email us. There's nothing alarming. It looks like we're eliminating some really important stuff, but we walked it all through last month, and everything is just included elsewhere. So with that, I will move 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you. Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Blackfield?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes?
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Additional board business. So this is a chance where we have the other committees to report out on any recent happenings. So I don't know, Mrs. Kellogg, do you have an update for communications? Okay.
Just a brief one. Mrs. Magala went through our communications plan, so she's put together a plan that is going to have metrics associated with it so that we can track the effectiveness of the communications, which will be great. And then we also talked a little bit about, I guess, communicating more with the sending districts regarding the programs and the opportunities that we have at Hunterdon Central. And so we're talking about what that could look like moving forward.
Okay. Okay, great, thanks. Would you like to do?
Yes, the Racism, Equity, Diversity Committee met, and pretty much all we discussed was our student reps to the board, because it's wonderful, and I think equity is about access. So having access and being a voice for students is really just such a gift, and I really appreciate Scott and Ed, all the work that you did working with students, and Jess, too, to make this happen. So that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I can give a quick update on the JTC. We met with the JTC last month, and we got a report about the beginning of the school year with transportation, and it was actually quite positive. So we heard that it went better than expected, better than it has in previous years. The transportation office was prepared with a lot of contingency plans just in case there were hiccups. And there were hiccups and bumps along the way, but anything major. And, the planning was just really well done. And so, again, overall, they were pleasantly surprised with how well everything's going across of all the transportation. So I just want to take a minute to thank the transportation office and the bus drivers for their commitment and excellence to transporting our students. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we spent a lot of time discussing the proposed settlement that we're going to be reviewing later tonight. It's on the agenda. And if both boards approve the settlement agreement, it will resolve our dispute over preschool transportation. So as you guys know, this has been a major disagreement between Hunterdon Central and Flemrare on how to safely transport the pre-K students. So if this agreement is passed, it's really a product of a lot of hard work and compromise, because I don't think either side is, skipping and jumping out of there with big smiles on their face. But, we hope that this can pave the way for more productive conversations with Flemrare and the future of JTC moving forward as well. So that's about that. Okay, any other updates for any other committees? Okay, additional board business?
Don't we have a residence forum?
Yeah, after, next.
Residence forum, general board comments, okay.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll open it up to the second residence forum. This is for any general public comments. If you would like to speak, please come to the podium, put your name and your municipality on that clipboard. I think there's a clipboard there, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. And just so you know, I'll set the timer for 4 so that you have about a minute to wrap up. So if anybody wants to come.
Good evening, Sandra DeVore, Raritan Township. At the August Board of Ed meeting, the board voted on the, in the Delaware Township vacancy on the board. The board members cast their vote and were allowed to provide a reason for voting the way they did. Mrs. Blutfeld and Mrs. Kellogg made a very rude and demeaning comment regarding candidate Mrs. Jessica Rothel. The reason they voted no on Mrs. Rothel, they said, is because she has 6 children and fears her time commitment. This yet again demonstrates the lack of character of these 2 women. I always thought one of the unwritten rules in life is that you do not attack someone's family. Both women did just that. Common sense would tell you that Mrs. Rothel, having 6 children, makes her even more qualified to be on the board. Clearly, this is someone who deals with many different personalities, thoughts, and opinions, which she uses in order to make the best decisions that will benefit her entire family, not just a select few. Mrs. Rothel is very involved not only at Hunterdon Central, but within her own Delaware Township community. She and her husband are lifelong residents of Delaware Township and Hunterdon Central alum. Even as recently as yesterday, I ran into someone and they brought up the board meeting from last month and said that they were appalled at the comments of these 2 women, but not surprised. Mrs. Kellogg is yet another example of her hypocrisy, where she sits there with a sticker of the words matter on her computer, but then proceeds to make a hurtful comment towards Mrs. Rothel and the size of her family. This, of course, is not the first time Mrs. Kellogg has made disparaging remarks concerning parents and families. A few years back, she made a comment, "We are expecting more than what parents are capable of," basically saying that the parents cannot make decisions for their own children. Perhaps the real reason Mrs. Kellogg voted no on Mrs. Rothel not being on the board is afraid that perhaps someone with a fresh face and new ideas may actually cause her to have to do the work and can no longer just rubber stamp like she did in the past. I also want to call out that after the August meeting, the YouTube video that was uploaded did not have the entire meeting included. It only showed one Delaware Township candidate, not both. Not sure if this was just a glitch or done intentionally. I know of a parent that had a similar situation happen to them back in 2021, where their parent was contradicting Jeff Moore. Another parent actually threatened to this person, and when the parent went back to review, it showed that it had been edited, basically saying that it was probably just the hijinks of Dr. Moore. But yet, here we are again, with information missing from the meeting. Parents and residents use these videos to keep abreast of what is going on within the district. The person whose job it is to upload these videos needs to make sure the entire meeting is posted without edits. I would advise anyone who is speaking to view the video in its entirety, and if there is anything missing, to please reach out to the Board of Ed and have the video taken down until it can be properly uploaded. And lastly, I'm calling on Mrs. Blutfeld and Mrs. Kellogg to issue an apology to Mrs. Rothel and her family for their insulting remarks concerning her being a viable candidate for the Board of Ed because she has 6 children. Thank you.
Good evening. May I begin? Oh, sorry. Jay Hoff, Flemington Borough. I first wanted to congratulate the district with a successful start. It was great to hear from the student representation. Very glad that moving forward will be something that is present on the board. I've always been impressed by the students who have come over the past few years to speak their piece and to be heard, and I'm glad that is officially being incorporated onto the board. I also want to congratulate our new superintendent. I've seen many of your presentations over the years and have also likewise been impressed by your work here, and I'm glad that an educator is sitting on the board. It was very interesting to hear the comments about the unity of this board to then directly go into 2 stalemate votes for the open seat. I think it would be disingenuous to not say that we all know where we stand. We say, why bring politics into it? I think we all know that politics are already here. There's no doubt, in my mind at least, that we all know, again, where we stand. There are candidates who have been endorsed by the New Jersey Project who are currently on this board or who are running. One of them happens to be Miss Rowenthal, I believe that is her name. She is on the New Jersey Project website under their official endorsements. The New Jersey Project is a designated hate group according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. We can make the argument that perhaps these people did not request this endorsement. My question then becomes, what are you doing that a hate group thinks that you agree with them? What actions of yours have led them to saying, we think this person might agree with us and we want to endorse them? My second question is, if you've been endorsed by this group and you would like to not be endorsed by them, say so. Make a stand. Let us know what you think if that is not what you agree with. I really have hopes moving forward that politics do not get in the way of the education of our students. But I think that we would be kidding ourselves if we didn't recognize where we are. Thank you.
Anybody else? We're good? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to close public commentary and we will move into board comments.
Okay, I just wanted to thank Jay for your comments tonight, because I think we had a speaker at the last meeting who asked the same question of the board, who spoke about New Jersey Project. I think they were booted off of Facebook and it changed. No, it was Fresh Face Schools. And then it was taken down for a content warning and then became New Jersey Schools. I can't keep up. But the point is that it was designated as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, an anti-government hate group. It's also been linked with Moms for Liberty, and Moms for Liberty is linked to Project 2025, which wants to eliminate the Department of Public Education. So I appreciate the public being aware and paying attention and being engaged. Thank you.
I don't normally respond to public comments, but if somebody's going to call me out, I'm going to call them out for spreading misinformation. And Ms. DeVore, what you said I said is not at all what I said. So I'm not sure where you came up with that. What I did is I gave my rationale of the reasons I felt Ms. Devine was a stronger candidate. I actually even said they were both strong candidates. I felt that Ms. Devine had some skills that I thought would be of more benefit to the board, and I felt that she had more time to devote. And being a board member is very time-consuming. I never said a word about how many kids anybody had. It had to do more with job and activities that people are involved in. I couldn't care less how many kids, how somebody wants to manage their time. So I'd appreciate if you're going to call people out, get your facts straight.
Anybody else? We're good? Okay.
I just have one question. Are we allowed to, is the public allowed to address board members directly or call us out directly for behavior?
No.
On the board? Okay.
No. Yeah.
So maybe we can also let the public know that.
Yeah. We can do that. Yeah. It's done as, yes. Yeah, so when you're talking with public commentary, all the comments should be made directly to me on behalf of the board. So that's for future reference. Okay, executive session.
President, Doug and I do have
Do you
a
have
comment.
oh, please.
One, I appreciate your summary of our JTC because it is difficult, complicated, and you've done yeoman's work on trying to bring us to some conclusion. So I appreciate it. But I do want to address some of the things that were said by community members at our last meeting, where they said that we made a decision not with facts but with emotion. I'm probably one of the most practical people, and I don't make decisions easily. I don't make decisions like that representing the community with emotion. I had facts to back up my vote. The business administrators from both districts work hard at providing us information. So I just felt that I needed to say that. The other thing is that I've been on JTC for 9 months, just as the other members spoke, and it is hard to say that the relationship between the two districts was fine up until January of 2024. It was not. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. And we're going to close this out. And we're going to move into executive session to talk about HIB cases, litigation, negotiations, and personnel. It's going to be a lot of fun. So with that, I would like to make a motion for us to convene into executive session with action, potentially action after the meeting.
Second.
Okay, I'll say all in favor, actually.
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed?
Nay.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, hold on. That was on the. Well, but we removed it, so.
Oh, it wasn't on the printout?
We do, but we need the employee ID number.
That's not allowed, sorry. We're almost there, Jerry.
Why is it, that's what you're gonna read, and
But that's not the right number.
Oh, that's not the right. It's going to be.
you have the right one?
You're gonna careful. Good Lord, be careful.
Because the other one's on though, right? The JTC settlement is on.
Yes.
What is
we
that
already have
number?
it.
I think she put it as a separate motion for itself.
Oh.
Because so it wouldn't, because sometimes it gets lost. You don't?
No, yes, you do. She means like settlement, it's O, you mean like letter O?
So do you want to make that LMNOP?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I'm trying, I'm just.
O1, and then we need O2.
Potentially.
Yes.
Because I think O1,
O2 will be the one we just discussed. You got it, or?
do you have your laptop?
Language. We're almost there. Don't worry, I'll text Chuck. I hope you're asleep, because I'm not.
Oh my God! My hands are, okay.
That's why I decided I'm not even bringing it anymore. It takes so long to load it up. It might be better to see if we have some older laptops. Oh, they don't? No, Chromebooks are horrible with Zoom and.
Are we gonna be a couple minutes? Because I'll go to the bathroom now, or are we gonna?
I used to think these chairs were comfortable until I sat in them for 4 hours.
Who's going? I could have gone and been back by now, but, I mean, not that I can't wait, but just.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm curious as hell. Who, we? We reconvened, but now you're gonna, yes, now you're gonna bring us all together, hopefully. That would be great. We're ready. What?
Motion to.
Yes, you're gonna motion to move the following two motions. Correct, yeah, we, at 10:43, we reconvened, so we're pretty much reconvened. So now we don't.
Okay, sorry for the long delay. We have two items that I would like to move. The first item is the settlement 01, which is move to approve the attached settlement agreement regarding preschool transportation as recommended by the superintendent. And actually, do I have to move those separately? Okay. And then settlement. Oh, okay. Good point. Thank you. Okay, so I would like to make a motion to move O1.
So moved.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any conversation?
Who was the second? I'm sorry, I missed it. Thank you.
Any conversation? We've had enough? Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bloodfield?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Oh, I forgot. Thank you. Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, the second one for O2 is move to approve the attached settlement agreement with employee 20349205.
Second.
A motion and a second. And is there any discussion? Okay, can we do a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bloodfield?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Abstain.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Duggan?
Yes,
Yes, motion carries.
thank you. Okay, and with that, I would like to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Have a good night, guys.